Hey, I'm Mike Farrington. Welcome back to the boardroom. In this video, I'm going to build a cabinet for my grinder. I'm going to use a real fun method to build these doors, and I'm going to review a few attachments that work in conjunction with the grinder. So if any or all of that sounds interesting to you, I suggest sticking around. As with all shop projects, I start with a sheet of plywood that's one step above firewood grade. And I break said sheet down using any and all methods available to me. I don't know if this is a pro tip or not, but it's a trick I use occasionally. If I have a shelf or really any part that needs to be one thickness less, I don't adjust my fence. I shim it out with an offcut. So in this case, the sides are full depth. The shelves need to be reduced in size by the thickness of the back, which is of course some measurement close to 3/4 of an inch. Using this method, the shelves will be reduced the exact amount needed. And this will make more sense as the video goes on. I use my dado stack measuring gauge to figure out setup, and lucky me, I won't need any shims. I found one that fits good enough. When using just above firewood grade lumber, it's a good idea to assume that it's nowhere near flat. So I cut dados twice, and I try and alter the way that I hold the piece slightly. This is in an ill-fated attempt to get the dado to cut to a consistent depth. I guess these are technically rabbets, not dados. Anyway, these are for the top, bottom, and back, and now it's on to the actual dados for the shelves. I must say I was surprised how well these pieces cleaned up, and as an added bonus, cleaning 20 years of propane forklift exhaust dust off the panels helped keep my hands much cleaner. To assemble the cabinet, I use glue and my third favorite mechanical fastener, the nail. Let's burn through this. Kind of boring. It's exactly what you'd expect, me gluing and nailing. Ta-da! After misdrilling some pocket holes, I pull my head out of my rear and assemble a face frame. For a freestanding piece like this one, I think a face frame is necessary to prevent racking. Also, when assembling a pocket hole joint, I think it's best to avoid using the torque limiting feature on a drill. I say drive the screw in slowly and feel when it gets tight. I think this gives the best chance of maximum tight with minimal chance of stripping. I add a top and bottom. This will give me some extra thickness to attach stuff, like these swivelly, locky casters. And don't beat on me for the huge washers. It's what I had laying around. Now let's take a look at the heart of the project, which I already started taking apart. I bought this Rikon 1 horsepower slow speed grinder because of the light. However, the light's not very good, and the extension cord's a little stiff. So that's a bummer, but it was on sale, it runs smooth and feels hefty. Oh, and I had a gift card. While I was mocking everything up, I realized that this bad boy was a little too top heavy. In the back of my mind, I thought this may be a problem, so I had a potential fix ready to go. My plan was to take the wheel off the swivelly caster thingy and then build an axle for it. I really didn't have a plan for this, I was just winging it, so this was what I cobbled together. It seems to work pretty good. After installing the new wheel setup, I did some scientific testing and concluded that the cabinet was 82.9% less tippy, which translates to good enough. And I totally forgot to reattach this plate to the bottom of the grinder. I reattached the bottom panel and bolted the grinder down to the cabinet. I took off the factory rubber feet because I thought the attachment would be a little more solid with them off. Next on the agenda is to install this thing, a Tormek bench grinder mounting set. That's a mouthful. When Tormek is mentioned, most of you will think of the slow wet grinders that Tormek is famous for. Those are great, but they're slow. This fixture will allow me to use any of the super neat Tormek sharpening accessories on this bench grinder, so I can do all my grinding on just one tool versus needing to own the Tormek as well. I know many people have and love their Tormeks. That's great. I wish you happy matrimony. For me, I'm just looking for a tool to help grind bevels and general sharpening, as all my final sharpening is done on water stones. So for my needs, a bench grinder is a better choice and it's more versatile, especially with this fixture. I'll do a quick demo of the various jigs that I bought later in the video. For now, let's move on to a one-way sharpening table. Through a wacky series of events, I wound up with two bases, which would be neat to be able to switch the table back and forth to the wheel of my choice. So far so good, everything fits, but just barely. So I tried installing one of the accessories that I bought, but no dice head lice, there's some interference. No problem, I just added some padding to lift up the Tormek base. I actually ended up liking it mounted higher. It makes it so the grinding is taking place more towards the top of the wheel versus directly in front. And if you're wondering, I can still get the wheels on and off. Now it's time to make a couple of doors. I get started by making some test cuts and measuring them. The idea here is if I measure correctly, I should be able to nail setup on the first try. So it looks like my 1/4 inch hollow mortise chisel cuts a mortise that's actually 260 thousandths. I don't know where it got the name, but this is a 3-piece groover. It can be used with all 3 pieces or just the outer 2. It's like a dado stack for shaper, and it comes with some shims to dial in the fit. These 2 safety bars make this type of cut fairly safe and consistent. It's a very nice feature to have on a shaper. And I start by making a cut with the 2 outer cutters only and no shims. Then I measure. Next up is some math. If my calculations are correct, I need 100 thou shim thickness, and of course, underline it several times for dramatic effect. I come up with a shim stack as close to target as possible. The thin ones are bent, so they fight me the whole way on, which is really annoying. Once installed, I make another test cut. I measure just to confirm that I'm awesome, or rather that digital calipers are accurate. Next up, I locate the groover's height, and I set the depth of cut. Once set, I run the grooves on the edges of my rails and stiles. With the rails and stiles grooved, I mark where I'd like the mortises to live. This doesn't need to be super accurate. I normally cut mortises just over my pencil line. This will give a little wiggle room, which can be helpful during assembly. What I was doing earlier was sizing a groove to a mortise bit. Now what I'm doing is using that groove to locate where the mortise goes. I absolutely love this tool. It's such a pleasure to use. I have a video on my channel where I restore this very tool. so check it out if you're interested. And as you can see, it cuts a fine mortise. After switching cutters to this big tenoning disc, I start by setting 0. I do this by raising the cutter until it just makes contact with the workpiece. Next, I measure how much needs to be cut away to leave a proper sized tenon, which needs to be the same size as the groove. This particular shaper has a fast up and a slow up button. Both are way too fast, and I normally miss my target at least a couple times. After setting height to about 300 thou, I set the depth of cut. Then it's off to the races. Cutting tenons this way really is fun and super accurate. However, I personally would never trust a man who wears Crocs, so take all this with a grain of salt. With the tenon cheeks laser sliced, the last operation is to cut the haunch. To me, haunch is a very funny word. Is Haunch the big guy on the football team, or is Haunch a country music artist? And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the test fit. That was so satisfying I need a cigarette. Two sticks can make measuring inside dimensions much easier. I head back to the shaper for a slightly raised center panel. Really all I'm doing here is cutting a tongue to fit in the door's groove on a piece of wood that's planed to some random dimension. After sanding the raised panels, it's time for glue up. I get all the stuff out and glue the door up exactly as you'd expect. Let's skip that. One tip, I add a couple of pin nails to help keep the center panel centered. Rather than buying the correct hinges and hinge plates, I wanted to use some of what I had laying around. So I came up with this goofy configuration and screwed it in place. It's embarrassingly clumsy, so I won't call too much attention to it. I had some oak dowel laying around, so you guessed it, it became the doorknobs. Although from a design perspective, I do like the look of the simple dowel. Maybe rounding the top slightly and carving just a little spot for your finger to grab onto would make this a neat detail. So, I'll file that thought away for a future piece of furniture. Wanted a couple of boxes to store jigs and their fixins. This is about as simple as it gets. 1/4-inch plywood, some glue and nails. Simple but effective. I played around with the layout until it was close enough. Then some glue and 23 gauge nails was all it took. Hey, that's not mine. Who did that? No problem, easy fix with some side cutters. Just wiggle until the nail breaks off. Bench grinders are super handy to have around the shop, but they're even better with some jigs for specific tasks. This first one is the Tormex straight edge jig, which is a terrible name, but in reality this jig is just for chisels and plane blades or similar tools. Has a 90-degree stop on the right side, and the tool is pinched in place with 2 thumb screws. I'm using 180 grit CBN wheel, which stands for cubic boron nitride, I guess, which is the world's second hardest material behind diamond. That's cool. They aren't cheap, but they run very true due to good machining, and then due to the hard grit, they last a long time, and they don't lose diameter as you use them. This jig makes it nice and easy to grind a blade 90 degrees to the edge, and that 90 degree is adjustable with the other 2 thumb screws. So this is my precious 1-inch Lee Nielsen chisel. I dropped it on the concrete floor of my shop. Yes, without even thinking, I stuck my foot out to try and save it, but no luck. I slowed it down a little bit, but it still hit with a good amount of speed. The only way to fix this is to grind it away. Well, the combination of the CBN wheel and the slow-speed bench grinder keep heavy grinding nice and cool. So no bluing, and in just a couple minutes, I'm ready to head back to the Waterstones for a polished edge. Here's a quick look at the polished edge. I went directly from the 180 grit wheel to an 8000 grit Waterstone, and in just a minute or two, polished enough of the edge to get back to work. If you're wondering how I did that, I used my super secret sharpening jig that I've been developing. How's that for a tease? Next up was a jig I was both hesitant and excited for. Sharpening drill bits accurately is not easy, so when I bought this jig I wasn't quite sure what to expect. When compared to actual professional drill bit sharpening systems, this is very cheap, although it is a couple of bucks. So after a little practice, I've come to the conclusion that this is a pretty good way for a small shop to sharpen drill bits. I can get a really good edge on a drill bit, but it takes some practice and skill. To me, the perfect jig is a jig that anyone can use and not mess it up. That's not this jig. Care must be taken. If you look carefully here, you'll see I've made a bit of a mistake. The two flutes must be perfectly parallel with the top and bottom of the clamp. I was a little off in my haste to finish filming this part. So step one is to grind a primary bevel, which creates a knife edge centered on the drill bit. This can be set to a bunch of different point angles. Step two is to grind a secondary bevel. The reason for cutting two bevels is that the result is a single point centered right at the tip of the drill bit. This makes for a drill bit that will wander less as it starts and create a more accurate hole. Couple things. Note that the four faces come to a single point on the drill bit. This is totally awesome. Also note the primary bevel tapers down to almost nothing on the outside of the drill bit. This was caused by my poor initial setup. I would still call this bit sharp enough to be used. I just could have done a little bit better job. This is where some skill is needed to produce sharp drill bits with this jig. Finally, note how well this bit stays in place when I spin it with my fingers. Switching from the 180 grit wheel to a 600 grit, the tool stand needs to be backed out to make this change. Kind of a bummer, but not a huge deal. Here's a simple jig, but it makes sharpening a knife pretty easy. Nothing makes me feel like I should have my own cooking show like when I cut a ripe tomato with a super sharp knife. It's a thing of beauty, and the 600 grit wheel will get you there. Plus, this is the single jig where you can justify this entire expense. Explaining to your significant other that for reasons of safety, you want them to have sharp knives, that's a pretty easy sell. After all, a dull knife is a dangerous knife. The last one is a bowl gouge sharpening jig. I think it's from One Way. It works well enough. The point here is that I'm a fan of the bench grinder and all it can do. I'll keep adding jigs to my collection as I find the need. That is a very nicely ground bowl gouge. And let's not forget all the random stuff that needs grinding, like my precious mower blades. I want my blades of grass to be finely sliced, not pulverized like they were in a garbage disposal. So there it is, an often overlooked but very useful tool, the mighty bench grinder and its new cabinet with plenty of storage. Links and more info in the description below for much of the stuff in this video. Questions, comments, fears, or concerns, post them below. As always, I'll answer them. Till next time, thanks for watching.